How long have you been talking to Owen and practicing socializing, that sort of stuff?
Well, it's weird. So I knew about game when I was younger.
Right.
And yeah, like, and I read the game like a lot of people did at one point. And me and my friends used to like kind of compare notes and stuff like that. And I actually I used to watch like YouTube videos, and I actually used to catch Owen's videos because he always had really good content. He's very
Right.
charismatic and he always has good insights. And that's when I kind of like learned how to become more social for sure. And then like I just got a long-term relationship.
Right. Same,
So
same, same. By the way, me, I dated a girl for like 8 years.
okay,
Seven
yeah,
years,
I'm
eight
a
years,
decade,
something
so
like
we're in the same boat, a very fucking
that.
long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you do lose. Actually, it comes back quick though. It's funny. So I like, and you probably find this too in your relationship. You lose a little bit of the social aspect of your personality because you tend to like do things together. You don't have to go out there on a limb with your personality as much. And I think you get a little bit like, it gets a little soft, but it's weird.
I can
Like,
totally relate to that, bro.
yeah,
I can literally relate to that. That's exactly the story of my life. I mean, I just forgot how to relate to women that way, just because I didn't approach women all throughout my 20s. I was just dating one girl for just a long time, and
yeah.
now I'm dating another girl, and I've been with her for about 3 years, and yeah, but my social skills in that department are not that great, and I want to work on that. um
Yeah. And you can, I
and it's
mean,
not
all it
just
is.
about getting laid. Actually, this is what people don't understand.
Yeah.
It's not just about getting laid. It's about unlocking your social abilities, just to be able to relate to people in a fun
Yeah.
way, and that is the gateway to do that.
Yeah. I can't relate to that. It's just about getting laid for me. No, I'm kidding. It's just about getting laid, dude. No, but I think it's no, it's true. Because what it is it in all seriousness, it's relevant to other things you're doing in your life, like having superior social skills. Like literally, it's exponentially. You can use that, outside of just like you want to get laid for sure. So, like I even find it because I do a lot of media stuff, that just the fact that I'm looser now because I am being more social again. Like you can even tap into it when you're doing a lot of your, whether it's a podcast, doing the radio, doing a TV appearance, that kind of thing. Like you tap into it because like you're getting yourself more into that mode all the time, and your body, you start to remember how you feel in that. It's like a certain, your body is like, you'll probably feel this when you're out and you actually are vibing and like you are being expressive. It's like you literally have a chemical shift in your body. Owen could probably go into the science behind it. I don't know the science behind it, but you can feel your body just feels different. Like you feel better, right? Like everything just feels like
I have
slow.
experienced that, yes.
Cool. Yeah. So again, like the more you do it, the more you're able to tap into that. And then you'll find yourself like doing like your podcast and doing other like things again for your business that aren't about getting laid. And you'll tap into it and be like, whoa, shit. Like, you get that flow, you can tap into it a lot easier. So I think that's the cool
What
part.
I struggle with, Ryan, is I look at these kind of I listen, and theoretically I understand everything what you're saying, but my problem is, so it's funny you said you read Game, right? I started reading Game and I couldn't finish it, and like I just got bored. It just doesn't interest me, um that much. It doesn't interest me that, and that's why I struggle with it. I struggle to find motivation to do it, and there are so many other things that I'm into that I also
Yeah.
struggle to find time to do it, because it is an extremely time consuming activity to go out and then meet people and then to engage with them and then to probably spend time with them, and things of that nature. I just somehow find a way to get back into my cocoon and do my thing, inside my house, and that's sort of, I mean, I theoretically understand everything what you're saying, but I just every once couple of weeks, couple of months, I'm like, fuck this shit, like I don't want to do this anymore. Like I'm just gonna work, and then there's a high performance guy like you who's telling me that you find time to do it. So then it kind of puts me like, it's a catch 22 kind of a thing. I have a love-hate relationship with it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, how often do you go out realistically, like in a given week? Like, are you getting out every week at all? Like, when do you actually get out? That's the first question.
I haven't made an effort to do this
Yeah.
consistently.
That's the difference. Think about it again. I always I really equate to the gym. It's like, think about going to the gym like once a month that's like, it sucks because you're always starting from ground zero. You're just getting that first place where the muscles are sore. And, you know, it always sucks the first time you go, but it's like Groundhog Day, because then you wait a couple weeks, you go again, you have the same shitty experience.
Right. Okay.
Right. When you go to the gym consistently, it's one of those things where, like, again, like kind of like eating good food, like you start to get kind of addicted to it when you're doing it consistently. Maybe go even 3 days a week, right? After a while, you're like, you know what? I like going now. It makes me feel good. My chemistry and my brain feels better, and I get rewarded for going. Same thing with doing, like, I would recommend if you went out like 3 days a week, I mean, dude, like an hour, I would say give yourself an hour and a half, anywhere between an hour and 2 hours. I think that's, I don't know. I know Owen would probably say like 8 hours, man, do it.
5 a.m.
So but for, you know, for a normal human being, it's like some kind of normal life. I think that, like, what I found is, like, right now, like it's actually going pretty good, because I'm like, and Wingman's good too, because it's kind of like, it sucks to go by yourself. And I always find, even with working out, like I work out maybe 4 to 5 days a week, but 2 or 3 of those are I'm meeting somebody to do it, just because it forces me to do it. So if you have someone that you meet consistently, I'd say 3 days a week, call it 1 to 2 hours. It goes from the first couple weeks where you like, your heart's beating, like, I got to go out and do this fucking again, which you always flip at some point. At the end of it, you always feel good. And that kind of like, because you'll finally flip and be like in your flow. So like, I'd say after like a month or two, you actually are like, okay, like when I go, you get smooth, and it's the coolest feeling. And then you actually want to start going out. So it's the consistency factor. That's the only difference. And getting an accountability partner and getting
about the Wingman thing. I'm very lucky over here, because I surround myself with young people. And my younger brother, then the guy that came with me, Prakhar.
I know, the two best dressed dudes on the boot camp.
Thank you. So yeah, he's great with this stuff, and he wants to take me out all the time, and it's just my hesitation, man. I need to get over it, but I'm working on it. That's why I was here. That's why I came here, to get over my fear of socializing in a fun manner with people.
Then give yourself again, like, I think it's like, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Just make a goal. You seem like a very like structured dude, unless I'm reading you wrong. Like you like some order in the world.
You're right.
Just like make a spreadsheet, like something that says, okay, I gotta click this box off 3 days a week. And then just do your reps, like going to the gym. Treat it like going to the gym. Just like, okay, I got to get up for my hour and a half. And the other thing is, like, make it an hour, because if you go out and then you're like enjoying yourself, you'll end up going 2 hours anyway. So say like 3 days a week, 1 hour each time, go with your brother, just say, hey, let's get it in. I don't know, like, depending on what your day looks like. For me, like, it's like, okay, around 4 o'clock, I'll meet this dude. He's my wing. We'll hit the park, we'll get going. And then, like, you know, by, I don't know, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I'm home working on some other stuff. I got that in, but it wasn't my whole fucking day. And I'm loose, and I've got that skill. I'm keep building. So I think that's the way I would do it.
I think I love the analogy that you gave me, that treat it like work first, like treat it like a thing that I have to do. And I'll program it into my calendar now. I'll create some accountability around it, because I keep it all random and I don't measure it. That's why it's not getting accomplished. Yeah. I think I really like what you said. I'm going to do this, man.
Yeah, you get your brother there, so you got someone to go with. That's the hard part. It's like getting someone who wants to. And your brother, I remember meeting him. Like I feel like he's down to have a good time.
so this guy that showed up with me, he's just like my brother, but he's not my brother. My brother is actually back in Dubai.
Okay. I thought
that's my real brother.
I thought you said it was your brother.
He's a very close friend of mine. The guy that showed up with me, his name is Prakhar, and I mean, we all are very close. Me, my brother, him. So it's kind of like we all are brothers, but my actual brother is back in Dubai. So yeah, this is good. Oh man, I'm talking to Ryan Payne about game. people don't know who you are yet. Okay, let me introduce you a little bit. Well, it's like it would take a book to introduce you properly. So I'm gonna need your help to do that. But
2 books.
So yeah, absolutely. All right, guys, this is my friend Ryan. I don't know Ryan that well. This is actually one of the conversations where I'm hoping to get to know him better. But Ryan is in the finance world, and Ryan has an investment fund. He is a regular on news channels like CNBC, Fox, things like that. He's a very, very credible guy. I'm actually pretty lucky to know him through a common friend of ours, Owen Cook. And yeah, I'm very excited to talk to you, Ryan. And there's a lot of topics that I want to talk to you about. And yeah, let's get started.
All right, Shakti, let's do it, man. Let's do it.
What would you say? Can you describe for me, Ryan, what you do exactly? What do you do for work? What is your company about? Anything else that you want to add? Who is Ryan Payne?
That's right. That's right. So yeah, no, basically I run a wealth management firm. And what that means in layman's terms is, people give my firm their money to invest, typically because, they're getting to a point in their life where they want to have it professionally managed because they're thinking they want to be financially independent at some point. So, the biggest conundrum we have, or the biggest issue we have, is your money over time is constantly depreciating, right? Cost of living goes up. We call that inflation, which you might have heard a lot about lately. It's getting talked about in the press a lot. But, think about it this way, and I'll just talk in US dollars, but every dollar you have today, or whatever currency you're in, is worth about 50% less every 20 years. So every $1 million you have today is worth $500,000 in 20 years. So, there's this necessary evil if you want to grow your wealth over the cost of living. And most importantly, I look at money as really just a vehicle for freedom, right? Having money is about being able to basically make choices on your terms, not on other people's terms, and being, what we call proverbially financially independent, or we have another term we call it FU money, or I don't know how PG a podcast
I love
is,
that.
Fuck you money.
I love that. Yes.
So you're at a situation, you've got this pile of cash over here. So that someone says, hey, basically Shakti,
do this, do that.
Yeah. You're not you're not the helm of other people's decisions, right? So you can say F you if you don't want to do something, because you have the independence to make decisions, to do the things the way you want to do them. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, it's really that. It's, we do financial planning, or I call financial independence planning, where it's like, hey, I want someone to professionally manage my money, work on a game plan for me. So when I hit X age, whether that's, younger, older, I can live off of what I built, and be financially secure, and kind of, again, live life on my terms, where I'm not beholden to bosses, other people. And, to me, it's kind of like, I always talk about the difference between being rich and wealthy, right? We have this, being rich is all about like, hey, I've got the coolest cars. Like you and I were hanging out in Miami together. Like I think you do see the coolest cars in the world of Miami. And you don't know if that dude or that lady, we'll say a man or a woman, is like, he just has crazy credit card debt, really can't afford it, but is flossing the best car they possibly can, that cruising that Lamborghini, down, what is it, Lincoln or whatever it is, the main strip there. I always forget the name of it, right there in Miami. You don't know, right? But it's like that perception. Rich is kind of that perception of what it is to have money. You don't know what's behind that, or if people are just trying to keep up with, maybe you're making a lot of money, but you're just blowing it on all these cool things, quote unquote, cool things. Worth is, like I say, being wealthy is just simply like, hey, living life on your terms. You've got enough money over here that gives you the freedom really to make the choices on your terms, not somebody else's terms. And I think that's really powerful. And they say there's a high correlation between happiness and having control over your own destiny. So, it's not like money can buy you happiness, but having the freedom to make decisions on your terms does create a high level of happiness.
And there are levels to this, right? So there's obviously the level that where you don't have to work, and you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle or whatever. And then there are levels to this shit. What do you want to do in life? Like, so for example, I'm passionate about films. Now, if I had enough money, I could, probably go make films or produce films. And then, Elon Musk wants to go to Mars, right? And he's got $200 billion, but that's not enough because his goals are bigger than $200 billion. So there's just always the next level, and that the pursuit of that gives meaning to life, isn't it?
Yeah, because let's face it, if you're Elon Musk, it's not about money at all at that point, right? $200 billion, like there's nothing you can't buy. It's inconsequential, the wealth you have. But to your point, his pursuit of going to Mars probably has nothing to do with money, right? It has to do everything with like his passion, his interests, hate to use the word passion, is overused, but and it does take more money to do that too, but that's funding something he's like exactly obviously very enamored with, which is space, which is pretty cool. I mean, come on, we got this rover right now on Mars. Now China's got the rover on Mars. I want to see a rover fight between our rover, China's rover, fight to the end, you know, two just like robot wars in space. But
I have to say though, Ryan, I don't understand this madness of going to Mars, man. I mean, there is just so much to do here on Earth. I don't understand it. I mean, it's really crazy. But I guess to each his own, and people are, you know, into a lot of different things. And yeah, it's fascinating to think. But coming back to your point, what you said, let me just break it down in even more simpler terms. What you said. So what you're saying is, and I understand this, but I'll just say it for the listeners. Some of our listeners are young or might not understand this. So what happens is when you make money, and you probably don't understand it if you don't have a lot of it. But imagine a situation if you have like something like $10 million, right? Or $20 million. And imagine that money is melting like an ice cap, right? Like it's like ice, because of inflation, the value of that money is just going down and down and down.
Yes.
So imagine it's costing you just to hold that money. You have that money, but just to hold that money, it's costing you like $100,000 a month or something, you know, and you're losing that money. So that becomes your responsibility to protect that value, which is sitting in that monetary asset, right? Which could be cash, real estate, whatever it is, right? And this is where you come in. So rich people who have a lot of money come to you and they give you their money so that you can then do responsible, good things with it, so that it doesn't depreciate in value, but actually hopefully appreciates in value, right? Is that accurate, what I'm saying?
I mean, in the simplest terms, actually, that's a beautiful way of saying it. I love that whole ice analogy, because that's kind of like what it is. It's like you don't see your money actually. It's like kind of like death by 1,000 cuts, or something that melts slowly. You know, you don't see it right away. It's like you go into your account and you log in, you see the cash is worth the same every day. The problem is slowly and surely over time, what's happening is everything costs more. And, you know, right now we're seeing that on a bigger scale. Like, you know, wherever you go buy food here in the US, it's crazy. Like the prices are going up like overnight right now. Gasoline prices are going up. Lumber costs, if you're buying a home right now, they're just going through the roof. So, right. It's exactly right. Or to have your money just sitting in cash, you're guaranteed to lose money. So it's just investing your money or growing it is what I call a necessary evil, right? You have to do it. And from my perspective, you know, if someone's saying like, hey, here's my money, that's a big responsibility. And what I think about is like, what's the highest odds that I can grow this person's money over time above and beyond what the cost of living is going to be later, what things are going to cost later. So it's weird when you're in my position, all I think about is like, how can the world get fucked up?
Yeah. So you take people's money and help people keep their value and hopefully appreciate their value. And you were saying that that's a big responsibility. And I understand that. Absolutely. Not only are you managing a lot of money, by the way, to just paint context, how much money do you guys have under management?
Well, by the time this is probably released, we should be at about $1 billion under management. So we're right on the cusp. I think we're about $20 million away. Wow. So yeah, we just about hit the $1 billion mark, which is you know, for us, it's a very significant number, symbolic.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Golf clap.
Man. That's awesome. Yeah. Awesome.
Took us 13 years. But yeah, we're there now. So which is kind of cool. And that kind of just like in our business, that's like it's a big milestone to hit. You know, kind of just like an elevated level in terms of where our firm's going. So it's kind of a very cool place to be.
Absolutely. And when you say that it's a big responsibility, I totally understand that. One thing is to manage all this money. And this is what people don't understand. This is what Warren Buffett said, right? He said, if I had to make double my money with $1 million, I could basically do it every year. But when you have to do it with $1 billion, then it's much harder to get the returns. This is exactly why Ray Dalio stopped taking money in, right? He's got, I think, $300 billion under management, Ray Dalio, and he just stopped his fund.
Right. I mean, they're one of the biggest hedge funds. It's an insane amount of money. Yeah. Now I feel like it's so small at 1 billion when you say 300 billion, but it's an insane amount that they manage. I'm not sure what
more people want to give him money to manage, but he just said no, because it's harder to find avenues to even invest with that kind of, when you start going into hundreds of millions and Obviously you're reaching $1 billion mark, and more power to you for the upcoming years. You're probably going to hit multiple billions in assets under management, and it's going to get harder and harder to find opportunities to invest on that level, isn't it?
Yes and no. I mean, they're doing a little bit differently, just because you got to remember they're probably putting like huge trades on collectively. No, every client we have is an individual client with their own account and their own investments in there. So from a scalability standpoint, that part's a little bit easier. But one thing that I think is interesting about investing in general, and I think this kind of plays into poker as well, which you and I talked. I am actually not a poker player. You don't want me playing poker with you. You'll kill me at poker for sure. Is the psychological component. Really investing, like playing poker, and I can imagine you can talk in depth about this, is the psychological aspect of it is a huge part of it. And the funny thing about it is when it comes to investing, because investing, if you think about it, it's really about human nature, right? I mean, you think about stock exchanges, they're marketplaces where you've got, millions of people making decisions, on lots of different information every second of the day. And it's interesting because people really haven't evolved that much in, thousands of years. We kind of do things the same way. So, understanding human behavior, I think is kind of the key. Whereas a lot of people that get into finance are analytical people. They go to the best Ivy League schools and they correlate. You think you're in finance and you're doing things with math, but ironically, understanding emotional intelligence as an investor is a much more powerful skill set. And it's one of the reasons why most investors or money managers on Wall Street underperform and don't do that well, is because they take an analytical approach to something that's very human. And it's kind of an interesting thing. And I'm sure you can correlate that to poker and some of the strategies and the things that you do psychologically. I imagine it would be a similar thing.
Yeah. So it's like this. Analytically, you will know what the right decision is. It's in the books. It's there. But when the shit hits the fan, when we have a situation, a stressful situation, and the market is going up or down, or the things are not moving as predictably as you thought they would, then all the analysis goes out the window. This is exactly what happens in poker. Like analytically, I can tell you in this spot you should take this decision, but taking that decision, in that spot, regardless of the outcome, is another thing. And
totally.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Yeah, I absolutely agree. In poker, I tell people all the time, analysis in poker is like 20% of the game. 40% is maybe mental game, and then in poker, which I'm currently writing a book about this, the rest of the 40%, last 40% is the networking, the social game. How well can you position yourselves in games with rich guys and desirable games, which are mostly private. You can't get into those circles unless you're good with your networking and that sort of thing. That's the next one. So Dan Bilzerian does this, right? He's the infamous Dan Bilzerian. That this is where he does it best. He's actually not a good poker player. He's decent, but he's not a good poker player. But he's great at positioning himself around rich people so that he can profit off that. So,
which is another reason why you have to get out and do your reps with your social skills every day. Cause you just said that's 40% of your game has to be like you out there making those connections, which is huge. So that component, that's a very interesting thing to think about. I think that's actually a good life skill in general, right? I mean, like we think about business in general and operating in business. I even say in my own business, the people component is just huge. Your ability to connect with other people. And it's amazing all the things that you can get access to if you just start to learn how the game of social skills work. And it kind of goes back to you and I were talking about earlier, in the sense that there are rules and it's a game you can play, but it's like we all look at it like some people feel like you either have it or you don't have it. And I think that's kind of the belief. It's probably even like Dan Bilzerian. You're probably like, oh, well, that guy, look at him. He's obviously he's jacked. He's built just like me, obviously. I go to the gym 3 times a day. Okay, maybe not. But this guy, he's got his big beard, he's jacked, he's got the best Instagram, and you're like, oh my God, this dude, he obviously is born with these skills. That's not true. And even maybe he did come from wealth. I think he came from his father was went to jail or something like that. But it's interesting to me that the wealthiest people I know, and as my business become more successful, I know a lot more self-made wealthy people that came from nothing, is they all understand that, you have to learn these skill sets. And anyone can learn them, but it is a skill. Social skills are a skill, just like learning how to archery or going hunting it's no different. But I think a lot of us just assume at face value that it's like either you have it or you don't have it. And that's not true at all. And like you just said with poker, it's like, you probably calculated moves about who you're dealing with, who you're playing with, and who you get to know and what games you get into. It's 40%. That's a huge percent, man. And that has nothing to do with like, having a good hand or anything. But it's remarkable. It's something we don't talk enough about because it is a huge part of business, a big part of getting ahead in life. Yet there's no classes in college. And, you and I, we know some extreme people, like you mentioned, our friend Owen Cook, that are probably some of the most extreme people when it comes to things like social skills. But you literally have to go to the fringe or to very unconventional places to learn the laws of something that literally are so effective and so important to understand, yet it's not mainstream in any way, which is kind of crazy when you think about it.
Absolutely. I agree with that. So coming back to your situation, Ryan, so in poker, we have mental game coaches. Okay. So kind of like the show, if you've seen the show Billions, there's this woman that is coaching. Have you seen the show?
I have. Yes.
Okay, good. So that there's this woman that is the mental coach for all the traders on the floor, right? Dealing with the pressures and,
yes.
So in poker, we have coaches like that. And we take coaching with them. It's pretty straightforward. They help us. They're very familiar with the emotions that we are going through. And they help us, walk that chaotic path or that journey of figuring your mind out, figuring your emotions out, how to behave when your mind launches chemical attacks on you. How do you guys do it? How do you do it? How do you do it in the world of finance?
Yeah, no, I love that because I look at it really simply, and I'm from Philadelphia. We keep things really simple. So nothing complicated, or I just like my brain starts to fry and I glaze over and like, what's wrong with Ryan? It's like, there's too many thoughts going on. So, keeping it simple is this. Like, look, if you look at the market long-term, if I just show you a chart since the 1800s, like I show you a chart of the S&P 500, which is essentially the largest 500 stocks in the US, right? It's a major index that everyone says when they talk about the quote unquote market here in the US, you're typically talking about the S&P 500. Right. It's going up literally. It's kind of like a wavy line like this. It's volatile, but the long-term trend is up. It's continually going up over time. So, if you're a poker player and you talk about odds, so, if you hold longer term, I think any like 15, 20 year period, you've 100% of the time made money in the past. That's pretty good odds. Like, I don't know about you, but 100% odds are pretty good, where I come from. So we know this intellectually, this, like you just said, we have all the stats on this. Yet my question is, why isn't everybody wealthy? The average investor, the S&P 500 has averaged 10% a year over time. That's an awesome return. Compounding your money at 10% a year is pretty sweet. Now, it doesn't come every single year. You have big years up, big years down. But we all know this intellectually. Yet the average investor.
Can I just bother you? Can you explain to the general public, what does it mean? I understand this, but I want you to explain it. What does it mean when you say, because 10%? I mean, yeah, it's fine, but it doesn't sound that great. But you use the word compounding. What does it mean? 10% compounded over 20 years. How does that work?
So, it's not the 10% that's the magic. It's the fact that you take that 10% that I'll do it. Let me think about it simpler. It's like if you had a snowball, you start at the top of the hill. And, I know there's no snow in Dubai, so you can't. I know in India you weren't growing up.
We do have it in the mall, man. Don't say that. We have it in the mall.
I take that back. When you're in the Dubai mall,
we do. We have everything in Dubai, dude. What are you talking about?
What are we talking about? So it's the greatest place on earth. Period. Yeah,
you're right.
For anything, everything you can have is in Dubai, which I've never been. I want to get to Dubai actually. I do want to get there just to ski indoors. Like that's my dream in the mall. But basically, you take a snowball at the top of the Dubai hill mountain there in the mall, and over time the snowball builds on itself and gets bigger and bigger. So the idea here is like you take that return, that 10% that you had, now you add it back to your investment. Now you're getting another 10%, but it's not 10% on what you initially invested. It's on the bigger amount. Right. So you add that on top of it. Now the next year when you get 10%, now not every year, obviously it comes in neat lines like this.
Average is 10%.
Yeah.
Some years you'll make more than 10%, right?
Yeah.
But the average you're saying is 10%.
And some years will go down 40, 50%. So that's the
Right.
problem, is the volatility in the short term just is what keeps people out of the game. The average investor's done like 2-3% a year on their money. Yet we know if you just held the market long term, you would make a ton of money. In fact, I always say, I joke, I say, well, you know, you look over my lifetime, the market's been going up. Over your lifetime, the market's been going up. Over our parents' lifetime, the market's been going up. Over their parents' lifetime, the market's been going up. Over their parents' lifetime, the market's been going up. Why don't I have a huge trust fund?
Right.
It's because, you know, the volatility in the shorter term, even though if we know it rationally, not emotionally, that over time markets do extremely well, we just have to stay in. Well, that's the hard part.
And another part is leverage, right? People use leverage and then they go bust, and then they have that bad experience, and then they never get back into the market again. This happens to so many people, right? Leverage is a dangerous thing, isn't it?
Oh, it's a crazy thing. So the basic human condition, and this is why markets tend to work the same over time. Like, you know, when you see how people are like, oh, it's different this time. They say that's the most dangerous thing you can say in investing. You know, it's like Mark Twain once said, I use this a lot lately, is history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. So what people tend to do, because human nature has not evolved that much. I mean, you can read books from Roman times and you're like, oh my God, you know, people were doing the same shit. You know, they had the same ego issues, same, you know, we haven't really, you're not going to be like, whoa, we were so different back then. We really weren't. You know, markets tend to oscillate between fear and greed. Now, the irony of all that is when people are fearful and prices are down. Now think about any marketplace in the world. Okay. Let's just say, like, what's the last big purchase that you had? Like the last thing you bought that was like a decent sized purchase for you.
Like
no
a physical thing?
Yeah.
I bought like $1 million of Bitcoin like 2 months ago.
Oh my God. I would have told you like, don't even get me on Bitcoin. Oh, actually, this is a bad example because you're going to prove my point with this. Something that's not investment related, and I'll go back to Bitcoin because of that, because that's even better.
Well, something that is not investment related, I would say. Does a trip count? Like I spent like $100,000 on a trip for me and my close friends, and like I just sponsored most of it. So that was a big purchase.
That's amazing. Where did you go?
America. I came here like in December to January. Yeah. I was here for a month. We went to Aspen. We went to multiple places, had a lot of fun. Amazing trip.
That's epic. Okay. So let's just say that, so you were going to book your flight to come over here, and you're looking at all the prices, and let's just say that, okay, like you looked at everything. You looked at the flights, you looked at the hotels, and all of a sudden, because like the CDC, I'm making this up, but the CDC came out and just said, that's the Center for Disease Control here in the US, is like, you know what? No more masks. COVID's just fake. So everyone's excited. Everyone's going out now, and everybody is booking the trip. When you're booking your trips, all of a sudden the prices go up 50%.
Yeah.
Are you going to be more likely to book that trip or less likely in that moment?
Less likely, obviously. Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense to me. Now the flip. No. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
No. Is that your final answer?
Like it's a complicated question because in my personal case, I think I'd just be neutral. If I was going to book the trip, I'd book it anyway, even if it was costing me a little bit more. But emotionally, I would definitely feel like more of a resistance to book the trip.
Yes.
So in that way, you can say that I'm less likely to book the trip, but it just because of the kind of person I am, I'm just going to get anything that I want to get, regardless of if the price goes up like 20-30% or even 50%.
Okay. But the initial emotional is like, whoa, let me take a step back here and evaluate.
Yeah, absolutely. I would reconsider it. Absolutely. I would reconsider it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds very rational to me. Now on the flip side, let's just say like they came out and said, we just found like 10 new strands of COVID, stay in your home, and all of a sudden your trip, like literally the cost went down by 50%. Would you be like more apt to get on that trip and book it, or less apt?
Absolutely. I would be more excited to book the trip. I'd book it immediately.
Yeah. Okay, that's amazing. And that's how a marketplace, like that's a very rational, like, hey, I'm going to buy things when I get a good deal. It's on sale.
Absolutely.
Now crypto, you bought near the top of the market. The price went up astronomically.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so this crypto is going up hundreds of percent. Right. And this is not just you, by the way. I'm picking on you, and I could pick on myself too, but you know what? It's more fun to pick on you.
Right.
So, but you were more, now everyone's excited about crypto. The price is going up like hundreds of percent. So you did what most investors do. When the price is getting higher and more people are jumping in, you were more apt to buy.
Well, I actually didn't buy because of the hype. I had actually been spending 8 months of my time studying Bitcoin. So once my confidence level in my study went really high, that is when I bought. And I bought with a long-term time horizon. So my time horizon was like 2030, that kind of time horizon. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to try to time the market. I'm just going to buy the fundamentals, what I think are the fundamentals based on my study. Or well, I would disagree on that, but that would be another podcast. I think that can be another podcast. But yeah, I read a lot of material, and when my confidence went up, I decided to buy and hold for a long period of time because I believe in the future of Bitcoin.
Okay, so funny thing is, you and everyone else I talked to has been doing the same thing. And it's no coincidence over the last 8 months, the price has risen dramatically. Now, I'm going to bet, and it's not just you, if over the same time frame, Bitcoin went down like 80%, you'd probably be less apt to get into Bitcoin at that time because there would be less validity around it. People would feel more sheepish about it. Like, let me tell you this.
I do see what you're saying, but I think the opposite. I think if Bitcoin really dropped 80%, I would actually sell some of my assets and buy more Bitcoin. I really would.
We'll talk.
But I do understand. Okay. I do understand. Okay, I do understand what you're saying, though. I do understand that people are less. You should actually get into it when it's when things are falling down, and people tend to do the opposite. Whenever something is going up and up, they just want to get on the train and ride that wave. And, people want to, get out of things while it's going down. Whereas what you should be doing is actually studying what you're getting into and make decisions based on the fundamentals, based on what the inherent value of the thing is, not based on the emotion of the market.
Well, that's exactly right. But the problem is everything it's happening right now when something's going up. And this only marketplace in the world is when you're investing money, as opposed to like going on a trip where it's obvious that it's a better deal and the prices are lower. When it comes to marketplaces like Bitcoin or whatever it is, no one was calling me talking about Bitcoin 12 months ago when it was down, 40, 50% when we had the big decline when the pandemic started. There was none of these theories that I'm hearing today about Bitcoin, which is crazy. Now we're 12 months later and everyone's a genius in Bitcoin, but that's just, it's the madness of the crowd. And I've seen this now. For me, you got to remember, again, history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. This is no different than the dot-com bubble bursting, which was my first thing that happened in my career, or we had the housing bubble burst back in 08, 09. So for someone newer to investing, this feels like something new, and there's all these great theories. For me, this is human nature just acting like human nature. So the point is, the advantage that I have as someone who manages people's money is I'm able to gauge, what people are feeling and now I can't predict exactly the day something's going to collapse or when it's to buy, but you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. Meaning like, I can say, okay, this is exactly what the housing bubble was like 10 years ago, where the price goes up crazy and everyone starts justifying that this is this new thing. For people that haven't been invested before, this is their first time in something like this, it feels very new. But the funny thing is, and this is why I get paid the big bucks, it's not new for me. And I can already probably tell you how this is going to end. And it ain't pretty. Because
you mean the Bitcoin wave?
Yes.
Okay. What do you think about it? Tell me, what do you think about it?
It's going to end bad. It's obvious.
You think Bitcoin is going to zero?
Well, I don't know if it's going to go to zero, but it has what you call intrinsic value.
Okay.
And it's a simple concept. This is why Warren Buffett's the most successful investor of our generation, and Charlie Munger. We just talked about compounding. There's no compounding with Bitcoin. And I'm not talking about when you lend Bitcoin out to somebody else who's borrowing it from you and paying you. That's just leveraging. That's just leverage, like you referred to before. That's not actual. Right. That's not like owning Exxon stock where you're getting a piece of the profits that get paid to you that you can compound over time. Or like a piece of real estate where you get the income coming in over time. Right now, Bitcoin, again, who knows? Maybe, it will become something that we use as a currency at some point. Maybe, but it's not a sure thing.
It will.
And in the meantime, what's that?
It will. I can suggest you some material to read on this. I think you'll really appreciate, even if you disagree with it, I think you'll really appreciate and understand what Bitcoin is a little bit better. It really will become I believe this might not happen, and another cryptocurrency might become this. But yeah, I believe the cryptocurrency itself will become the base layer of our financial system, kind of like 100 years ago everything was backed by gold. So the Bitcoiners believe that everything eventually is going to be backed by Bitcoin. Now, I'm not naive enough to believe that that is for sure going to happen. I think cryptocurrency is going to be that technology where everything will be based upon in the future. And right now, Bitcoin is the leading horse in the race. And that's why I believe in Bitcoin. Yeah. But I truly think that the US dollar and all fiat currencies are failing us. And one of the big problems is inflation, and our governments are failing us with their printing of their money and mismanagement of the money. And there's many issues that we could talk about. That like I said, that could be a whole another podcast in itself. But
it's gonna hurt when I'm right on this. But you got to remember though that then that's the other thing. Currencies aren't an investment. Period. Currencies depreciate over time. Real assets appreciate over time. Productive assets, and that's why when people say it's new gold, what people don't realize is gold is a horrible investment. If you look at 100-year chart on gold, it's shit. It literally is going 1% over inflation over the long term, and it's extremely volatile. So the point is, over the long term, whether it's new gold, whether it's a currency, they're all horrible investments.
Ryan, how Bitcoin is similar to gold? It's not. I'm not saying Bitcoin is.
You're buying your own bullshit. Go ahead.
It's just like gold because gold is incorruptible. Nobody can make more of it.
But it's a bad investment. But it's a bad investment. So absolutely, it's not an investment. Yeah.
So what I'm not saying that I'm not saying get rid of all assets and get into Bitcoin. Obviously, there's going to be a place for assets, and that's going to be the main thing. But the problem with assets is it's hard to judge which asset is going to win, and you're good at that, but the average guy is not good at that, and the average guy doesn't have maybe the capacity or the time to study into it. So for a guy like that, a Bitcoin or gold is a much better place to put his to be liquid in, as opposed to cash, for example. Because cash is just losing. That's the argument that Bitcoiners are making.
And that's the flaw in the argument, because again, it's actually, you think about it, productive assets over time are inflation hedges, right? So if you own a company that has profits and inflation kicks in, that means they can raise their prices. And when they raise their prices, their revenues go up. And as a shareholder, you benefit from that because you own all the assets of that company. That's why stocks inherently are an inflation hedge. That's why real estate is. That's why currencies are not an inflation hedge. Invariably,
absolutely,
Bitcoin,
I agree with that. But which companies go up and down? Companies go bankrupt too. So how do you know
how long to stay portfolio never does? But a diversified portfolio never does.
I understand that, and you know how to do that. But what I'm saying for the average guy, for people, and also like the main feature of Bitcoin, Ryan, is decentralization. Nobody can make more of it. That's the thing. So
what? Who cares? It has no intrinsic value.
People will care when enough people have their monetary energy in Bitcoin. Then people will care, and it has been growing. It has been growing at a very fast pace. The adoption
yeah.
of Bitcoin has grown like it has made history in the last 10 years.
But not commercial
it's not a
use.
joke anymore.
Commercial use is not going up in the last 2 years. So there's more people gambling in it, but actual you using it for merchants, statistically, the volume hasn't gone up. It's still 75% of listed
There's
activity.
a long way to go. Yes, there is a long way to go. I agree.
Look, I don't want to get hampered down on this, but the point is you're gonna be really sad later. I'm sorry, but I'll be here to give you a bear hug when it happens. But point is,
I appreciate that. I really don't think so. Yeah. You know what? Let's lock in a date today. Okay. What is it today? 26th May. All right. We will talk on the 26th May, 2026 in 5 years and see where it goes.
2026. That's too far. I'm going to win this battle before then.
Okay, perfect. I think Bitcoin is going to be at 500K by that time. That's what I think.
I'll give you a year. I'll say a year from this date. It's okay. I don't think it has a year life left, but
oh really? Well, yeah, we could even put money on this, Ryan. We could. I'd be willing to put money on this. I'm ready to bet with you if you want to put a price target on Bitcoin 1 year from now, and I'll put a price target. I'm ready to put money on this. I really believe in Bitcoin.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you do. I'm scared. That's why I'm here for you. But no.
Do you want to put money on it?
Sure.
Let's do it. What's your price target in 1 year? 26th May, 2022. What's your price target?
I mean, definitely lower. I mean, it's going to be, where is it today? It's like 40,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
Right,
okay. Think about it. Think about it. I'll think about it. Okay. And we'll negotiate on a price target. And I'm going to put it in my Instagram. We'll put some like 25,000 like that on.
I'm putting my mouth in. We'll actually do a podcast in a year, and we'll actually we'll review it. And
absolutely, let's
whoever has to eat.
Absolutely, let's do it.
Eat shit. We'll eat shit. Okay.
No, not eat shit. Like we'll just put money on it.
For me, it's more about the ego. Forget about the ego. It's more than money. Come on, money's secondary to the ego. I'd rather just be right.
Well, all right. So we spoke about behavioral decision making, right? And we were talking about that. What about you told me that certain habits change your life, right? So being extremely organized, you said, right? And I'm actually working on this right now. I'm working with a productivity coach to learn calendar, to wake up at the same time, because my discipline over here is horrible just from playing poker, right? I used to play poker like 20 hours straight, high stakes games, and I'm like extremely disorganized. I'm actually seeing the benefits of getting organized in my life now. I just get so much more done, man. Like it's amazing. Like when did this show up in your life? And how has that changed your life?
Yeah, no, I think it's men specifically, not to be sexist. I think men typically, when we're younger, we tend to be a lot more disorganized. And what I found for me was like having to run a business, getting into actually running my own business is a horrible thing to be disorganized. It becomes like a horrible evolutionary pressure where, and hopefully when you have some success, you get so many things coming at you that you literally either just break down or you just like have a come to Jesus, as we like to say, meeting with yourself. And you're like, okay, I have to get on top of, what the hell is going on in my chaotic life every day. I can't wake up every day blind with emails, phone calls coming in and not what's going on. I heard a really good quote one time. It's either you control the day or the day controls you. And I think it's really powerful because what I learned in my business specifically, which is actually unlike the opposite of a poker player, everything's early in finance and investing in people and talking to people. A lot of my clients are business owners and they're up early and they want to talk early. Like you're in Vegas right now, you're playing poker. You're like, I'd be like leaving in the morning. You'd be coming back in if we were roommates. Right. I'd be like handing you my smoothie on my way out the door after you've been in the poker all night. But what I learned is we talked about leverage before. You mentioned leverage. I learned by getting up really early and getting on top of my day. Oddly enough, I could finish my day early. So instead of like starting a little bit late, if I start like 9 o'clock, forget it. I'm screwed. I could end up working till 6, 7 at night, just playing catch up. But oddly enough, if I start in the morning, like I work out early, I'm big on working out early just because, it gets you into a different emotional state, and I have to be on with people, and my job is very people centric. So it's critical for me to get the blood pumping and actually be in a really good state early. But the funny thing is, with that kind of momentum, and maybe I start at like 7, 8 o'clock, my actual business day, like I could be done some days at 3, 4 o'clock. So you actually leverage. The crazy thing is, by getting organized and again, controlling the day as the day controlling you, you actually open up a significant amount of time in your life. And that's huge because, the funny thing is, you can probably attest to this too. We start out when we're younger, like I got to college. I used to hang out and do nothing all day. I remember just sitting around watching, TV, like hanging out at my buddy's place, just like pissing time away. As I say,
I did that
on the young.
Years of my adult life. I did that.
From
21 to 25, I did that. And, I used to drink a lot. And by 25, then I quit drinking, and then I, turned my life around. But I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's funny because we have all this time when you're a little bit younger, a young adult, really. And then you get into business and you get into work to get busy. And then all of a sudden you're like, God damn, like I don't have time at all. And then the irony is you went from like wanting to get busy and have things to do.
Youth is wasted on the young. Have you heard this? Youth is wasted on the young.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically, like, okay, now you find everything you can optimize time because you like your free time. You just like, you look for it. So organization, I think, is a very powerful tool. And, what I found in my business is we got really busy at one point. We had an inflection point where all of a sudden there's more business coming in than I can handle. And there's another famous saying, like, if you're a business owner, you're thinking about being self-employed, you're either working in your business or you're on your business. You're either like you're the restaurant owner who's cooking the food, serving the food, or like your Starbucks and you're the CEO, you're Howard Schultz. And, obviously you're thinking about the big strategy. You have baristas that actually serve the coffee. And that was a big thing for me, is deciding, okay, I'm not going to be the financial guy who's managing all the clients that come in and working in the business. I built a system where I'm running the business. Like literally I built models for like, if a proposal came in, I had a team of interns that would just like follow instructions like a conveyor belt. And I'd hire advisors. I teach them my process, and everything became processes that I was building. And then talk about leverage. Then all of a sudden now you're running a business. And that to me was one of the bigger inflection points, where I came from like being a little mom and pop shop per se, versus building a real business that has leverage and is built off a platform that we can infinitely grow. And I can infinitely hire new advisors, and I've got all the process and the platform in place to do that. That's a big step, especially if you're on the entrepreneurial journey, is going from that one state of mind of being in the business to that other state of mind of now running the business. Powerful.
Right. I actually just finished a book last week on this topic, exactly on this topic. It's called eminent Revisited, something like that.
I think that's where it comes from, actually, that whole idea.
Yeah, that whole idea. He talks about, it's by Michael Gerber, and he talks about people often think that the product is the business. Like if I have a genius product, that's just going to solve all the problems. But oftentimes the process is more important than the product. So for example, McDonald's doesn't make the best burger, right? It doesn't make the best burger. You're probably your favorite cafe that you visit, that burger is much better than a McDonald's burger. But the way the McDonald's has solved the process of having a uniform burger across the world, across 40,000 locations, that's the real product of McDonald's. It's not the burger, it's the process through which they're selling, the system. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's very, very powerful. I'm actually applying it to my operation right now. And I used to organize poker games. And I'm right now in the process of making a private members club for poker players. And I'm building systems and teams that will handle clients and really get a system going instead of just being Shakti's game. I used to organize games and it was just Shakti's game. And as soon as Shakti stepped out for a holiday or something or anything like that, the whole thing collapsed. But the thing has to be able to move without Shakti. Amazon will survive without Bezos, I mean, he did give the vision and he executed at this point. But at this point, Steve Jobs is dead and Apple is still, doing fine. And that's the genius of actually Steve Jobs, that Apple, Steve Jobs lives through Apple. That's his genius. And that's the genius of entrepreneurs.
Point. Yeah, it's not Tim Cook that the reason Apple still what it is today. It's the right the processes and the belief system that was put in place by literally how many years has Steve Jobs had passed away, and it's still relevant, which is remarkable. And it's funny because there's a movie that came out a couple of years ago about Ray Kroc, who was the one who took McDonald's.
Founder.
Never saw
it.
What's that?
Founder.
I saw it. Yeah, because they took this one burger shop, the McDonald's brothers, who ended up obviously like screwing over completely. But what I thought about was there's that scene when they're on this big, like I think it's a basketball court or something, and they're using chalk and they're building out the whole blueprint of the process there on this map. And I think to me, that's like the perfect analogy for what you do. You literally build a blueprint. Can't speak today. And that's what I did with I built this whole assembly line, which never, no one ever did this in the investment world, where I could take an intern, they read the instructions, all the proposals come in, and you just have all these kids just sitting here working, rows of kids, like literally saying kids, but college students, putting all the proposals together, and just streamlining all of it in the same way, which is really cool. Now, the only thing we need to do now is come up with that very specific blueprint where we convert those dollars right to Bitcoin. And when they're in Bitcoin, we can buy anything we want. Bad joke. Okay. But we'll, but the point is processes are really critical here, Shakti.
Process wins. Absolutely. Yeah. Process wins inside of a business. The business is the process. It's kind of like, it's not what you do. It's how you do it. It's the cliched line. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and it's a game changer. Your whole mindset changes. You actually look at things from a perspective of like more abundance, and every decision you make now has more leverage to it, right? As opposed to I'm going to serve one client at a time. Now it's like, okay, we're going to bring 100 clients in at a time, and now we have a process to accommodate those 100 people. Whereas I could just accommodate one client at a time before. Like, I mean, that's tremendous leverage in your business. Insane. Go ahead, Ryan. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I'm in my early 30s right now. I'm 31. And this is the biggest lesson that I'm learning, Ryan. I worked so hard throughout my 20s in my operation, in poker, and in so many things. But this is what I realized, that no matter how hard I work, I can't be in all the places at the same time. So at the end of the day, you will hit that limit of output. And if you want to go beyond that limit of output, you have to have processes that are happening regardless of you being there. And that's not so that you can go to, Tomorrowland and get, hammered. That's so that you can work on more things. You can work on more things, and then you get processes in place in that new thing. And then you move to something else, and then something else.
Yeah.
And that's how you build a company, a conglomerate like Apple, Amazon, McDonald's, all these good places. Also the Howard Schultz, Starbucks, that's a great one. What he did, he went to Europe, he saw a cafe in Europe, and he's like, we don't have this in America. We should have this coffee drinking culture and people doing their meetings and, socializing over a coffee.
Yeah.
And that's a great concept. And he just brought that concept, but he did it much better than Europe. That's where he took the idea and he stole it,
Yeah, great artist steal. I think that's Steve Jobs.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah. Great artist steal, good artist copy, great artist steal. I'm actually going to send you a thought that I recorded. It's like a little poem that I recorded on this subject of good artist copy, great artist steal. It's by Picasso, said by Picasso. I love that. By the way, I'm reading Steve Jobs' book right now. It's one of the best.
Isaacson one.
Yeah,
It's great.
absolutely. Yeah,
it's great.
It's
great.
I love
it. Yeah.
I loved Arnold's book, but I think this one's better than Arnold's. Have you read Arnold's?
More remarkable than Arnold Schwarzenegger.
My God.
Let's be honest.
he really is. I hate to admit that, actually, because I love Arnold. I mean, I just love Arnold, and I truly think Steve Jobs is a little bit of a nut job. So as a person, I would much prefer, to idolize Arnold compared to Steve Jobs. Yeah. But but he's just such a fucking genius, and this book is so well written. It's just it's insane. So you've read it, obviously. Have you read the Arnold's book?
I haven't
That's
read the
pretty good
Arnold one,
too.
but now, I mean, you're so passionate here about
Oh
Arnold.
my
I gotta
God,
read
it's
it.
pretty.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's called Total Recall. It's really really
All
good.
right, I'll check it out.
But
On your
I do think
recommendations,
Steve
Shakti.
Jobs is I do think Steve Jobs is better though, and I hate to admit that, but I think that I think it is true.
Just because he's not as ripped as Arnold. It's okay. It's okay. He has good qualities
Ryan,
too.
why don't you tell me about this book that you mentioned on my brief? It's called The War of Art. It's been on my list. I've been meaning to get to it, but I haven't gotten to it for the last couple of years. And you said this is the most important book that the most relevant, the most important book that you would like to read again and again until you imbibe everything in it. So what is it about this book? I want you to sell me on this book. I want to go read it.
Yeah, no, it's a short read. It's not that long a read, but it just talks about the artist.
Steven
process.
Pressfield, right?
Steven Pressfield. That's exactly right. Yeah, he's run a couple other
Steven
ones too, but that's his best one.
Yeah, he's got the good where the good ideas come from. That's another one by him, Steven Pressfield. That's the one that that was on more of a priority for me, where the good ideas come from, because I'm very passionate about ideas, and that title just like hits a home run with me.
Yeah.
But now that you say this book is your favorite book of all time, now I want to get to this one before the other one. But what is it? What is so special about this book?
By the end of this video, you're going to sell your crypto and you're going to buy that. You're going to read that book. Yeah. So basically that book, what I love about it is, I mean, it talks about the artist process. And I feel like, funny, in my own business, it's a bit of art as well, because, it's funny. A lot of my time is spent doing a podcast, doing radio, doing television. And, it's a lot of these more creative places that you have to tap into, performance. And I do a lot of writing. And I think he's a writer, and he just talks about his process and the arduous process of basically, how you get good at your craft. And I think that's what I love about it is it's, he talks about how inspiration doesn't just like come spontaneous, like, oh my God, this great idea, but through, by sitting down every day and doing your goddamn work, in the kind of the grueling process of that. Cause it is, getting up every day, whether it's running a business, whether, you've got you're doing your poker and your podcast, you have this, it's a grind, right? There's anyone who tells me like, oh man, it's awesome, run my business, it's so cool. I know they're lying, and I know they're not a real business owner, because anyone who actually runs a real business hates it on some level. It's a love-hate thing.
Yeah.
But like,
it is a love-hate thing. Yeah.
It's a love-hate thing. And you're like, most days you're like, oh my God, you got to deal with so much bullshit. Like no one really wants to be the owner. It's like, it's not a glamorous job by any means. But he talks about how by sitting down every day and doing what you need to do, that's when inspiration you talked about actually comes. He talks about the muse. And he just talks about his whole process. And he uses this one metaphor of we go back to hunters and gatherers back in the day. And he's like, imagine you wake up in the morning, it's cold, you got to get your spear, you go out in the wilderness, you can imagine you're tired and the last thing you want to do is be out there in the goddamn cold, with your spear, trying to find your food. And, you're moving along. As you keep moving, all of a sudden, your body starts to warm up a little bit. And all of a sudden you see your first prey, you hit the prey, you nail the prey. All right. Now, all of a sudden, everything's starting to work on all cylinders. And then, all of a sudden now you're into it. Now you're totally into the moment. You feel good being out in the world. That's kind of going out there and being social every day, by the way, kind of very similar. And now you're just nailing every goddamn deer that's in front of you. And then it's the end of the day, you've worked, you come home, you've got all these deer on your back. I'm totally paraphrasing. The village is happy. Your woman's happy. You brought the bacon home, and now you can rest and you just have that satisfaction. Right. And he just talks about, you've got that process every day, right? Every single day is a new day. It's not like you get, sometimes you do get into momentum. That's fair. But for the most part, you've got to recreate that every day. And he says, if you can recreate that every day, that's essentially where greatness comes from, right? It's in that arduous, the mundane of sitting down and doing your goddamn work. And eventually that inspiration comes. But you've got to give the muse the ability to award you. And I'm totally paraphrasing, but that's
success has to be earned and re-earned, right? So that this is what people forget, right? Like success is like paying rent. The rent is due every day, to live in the house of success. And I love, Owen actually did a video on this subject that I think is his best video. Ask him for it. He'll send it to you. It's called Nothing Fails Like Success. I love that video. He talks about, he's in the redwood forest, and he's talking about, how we tend to fall off that pedestal of success as soon as we get there, and you have to train yourself to not do that. You have to just go after bigger and bigger successes so that you keep that momentum, because the general tendency is to get to a place of success and then you just get relaxed and easy, and then you just fall off. This kind of happens with me in bodybuilding. I mean, I can work out a lot, and I know it's all the right things to get to a really fit physique, and I once in a while I get to that point. But as soon as I get to that point, inevitably it just, I get a little more relaxed, things start to creep in, and and then 2-3 months later you put on 5-7 kilos, and then it's that grind back up again to that
shame
point.
Kicks in.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens, man.
Which is a great motivator too. But yeah, if you can self-motivate, that's great too. And it's hard. I mean, I think you go through phases, and I think there's times when you don't, you're working too hard, and you should actually, you talked about too, like the whole idea of, you get to a point where you're organized and you free up time. And sometimes that free time is like, you need to get time to like recuperate and not always be on that hustle. Right. And that's where a lot of your creativity comes from too. I find that like, if I get too overworked for too long, I get completely uncreative. I get cranky. I'm miserable. I hate my business. I hate life. But when you have that regeneration where you actually do take time off and you do other things, you get that kind of that rebirth that you need. So I think as you get older, you get better at that. When you're younger, you're just like, I got to keep hustling. And then you realize how futile that can be too. And then it gets really dark. But, the point is like, I think, as you move along in your journey, like, you start to better gauge like, oh, I'm getting overworked now, and I don't really want to get this overworked. Because the other thing is like, when you get to a certain level of certain amount of money, you start to realize the next rung on the ladder is not going to be that, like, it's not going to make you feel that much better. So I think you have to start to like do things again for the enjoyment, especially when you start to get some kind of financial independence, because it just doesn't move the needle for you. Like, I could say to you, like, oh, I want to get billions and billions. But the reality of it is like, it wouldn't really make me that much happier. It'd be one more rung on the ladder, but like you kind of start to realize it's a little bit futile too. So, you've got to find other reasons why you're doing what you're doing every day.
Well, I would add to that. Like, I do want to make billions, and I'm very passionate about it. But the reason is not so that I could buy yachts. The reason is so that I could do more powerful things, more meaningful things, for my life. And that's the real reason. So even for you, that's the reason that you want to make money. That's the reason why most people want to make money, to get to their goals. It's not, you get over buying this shit. I literally thought about this, Ryan. It's so crazy. I look at your Instagram. I look at my Instagram. You're such a profound guy. We're talking about, learning here. You've obviously worked on your life for probably over a decade. I've been working on my life for the last couple of years, and we've got results, and we're both successful. And if you looked at my Instagram like 2 months ago, before I started, wanting to start a channel and build a brand, I didn't have these professional photos. I was not putting in any effort into my Instagram or my Facebook or anything like that. Like, my Instagram looked like that of like a 18-year-old student or something. And, if you see some of these Instagram guys that have these impressive Instagrams and the pictures and the, the cars and all that. And the distinction between, what I want to talk about is the distinction between looking successful and being successful, right? So people are going to probably, I'm going to tag this video onto my Instagram saying I interviewed this guy who's a successful guy, in business. I'm going to tag them, people, and I'll tag your profile, and people are going to open your profile and be like, okay, this profile doesn't look, that fancy, that great. Yeah, success is not that fancy. It's not that great. Here's Ryan Payne with under, like $1 billion under management. He's as successful as one can get. And it's not about, so people get confused between there are people on these social media that look rich, there are guys that will just rent the Lambos and they'll just take pictures and they'll just look rich, versus this is what actual rich looks like. This is what actual success looks like. Guys like you who are sitting in their office, nothing fancy, just working. just grinding, man. That this is real work. I mean, if you were putting in effort into your Instagram account or just to show that glamour, then you probably wouldn't, like Warren Buffett doesn't have a great Instagram, or like a
90, he has
fancy
not
office.
embraced Instagram.
Yeah. Like, well, not just Warren Buffett, but and any person like that, like they don't have fancy offices. They don't have, I mean, some people do, but
Yeah.
I guess my point is that there is a distinction between looking successful and looking, rich, and then actually going after it the way you're going after it. And I want to encourage people to actually go after it and not just look rich. Don't just take a picture with the Lambo. I mean, have enough money to be able to buy 4 Lambos and then not even buy it. Do you know what I mean? Like that's what I wanted to say and make a point about.
Yeah. No, I like that. I like that actual saying, like, have the money to buy it, but don't buy it. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about being rich and being wealthy. Being rich is kind of like, right, it's the superficial. I'm rich. I'm like just spending all my money, which you might not even have anyway. Or these people like maybe even renting their Lambo. But I think, again, I think it just comes down to what's the idea, what's the goal of money. And to me, the goal of money is to give you freedom. And to me, freedom is not having a Lambo. And for some people it is, in all fairness, it might be. To me, it's just like, I just want to do what I want to do on my terms, right? I like, I want to be with my schedule the way I want to do it. If I don't want to do something, then I'm not going to do it. And for the most part, like, that's kind of where my schedule is today, right? Like I'm doing the things I do are pain in the ass, but I like doing them, like I actually I like doing my podcast every week. It's a lot of fun. I do it with my brother and my dad. Like that's something like, I'm going to think about forever, like it's so much fun. And like those things I would do, whether I was working or I wasn't working. But I have the money and the time where I can invest and do these things. And actually the nice thing is they do, that the marketing stuff I do does actually produce cash flow as well, which is cool. But I think but also too, like there's we always say that we delineate between old money and new money. New money is a bit more flashy. You get like a lot more of the fancy things, but like old money is very, very subtle. A lot of times old money, you don't know people have money. And I don't know if there's a right or wrong way to do it, but to your point, you got to be a little bit suspect when someone's flashing their cash. That's like, and a lot of times that's not indicative of that they have money. It might be that they're like, don't have any money at all. And there's an old saying in the US, you have the millionaire next door. There's a lot of wealthy people in the US that could be very blue collared, very unpolished. You won't even know. It's interesting. I have a lot of clients that are super wealthy, but you would never know they have money. And I think there's a lot more of that. If you were to look on a percentage basis, and because it's not flashy, we don't realize that's like where real wealth is. So I think that's a really good point. And it's something to be cognizant of as you see all the things the consumer culture and the Instagram and all the fancy shit that gets, flossed in front of us all the time.
Yeah. And some people have had success with that kind of stuff. I mean, fake it till you make it type of a thing, like this Kylie Jenner and this whole Kardashian clan. Obviously, I mean, they faked it for a long time, but then it became real. They did make it. But you know why it became real, Ryan? Because they really put in the work with their show. I don't know if you've heard of the show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I mean, it's a silly show. Maybe you can't learn a lot from it, but these people probably went through a grind, shooting that show, getting it out there, promoting it, promoting it from all different kinds of angles. Then they had the wisdom to capitalize on it by launching products around it. And that's where they really became businessmen, right? It was not like silly gossip anymore. Like they really became entrepreneurs. And I applaud them for that. Like really, I applaud them for that. And yeah.
Well, funny enough is Kim Kardashian, a lot of people don't know this. She was Paris Hilton's intern. That's how she learned.
Really?
She learned the blueprint.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No, it's everything's calculated. Paris Hilton was the first. She learned
I did not know that.
Yeah, a lot of people know that. So no.
Wow.
This is a cold ass businesswoman who knows. I mean, come on, that trust me, I know from just doing the modicum of media stuff that we do. To put on to do a reality show like that, all that stuff takes so much goddamn work.
Absolutely.
And they probably hustled in ways we don't even know.
Exactly.
But she learned the ropes. Again, great art steal. There was a playbook there. She saw the zeitgeist of the time. She saw what Paris Hilton was able to do, and she was able to apply it. and they built their own empire. But yeah, I mean, there's so much hustle behind that you'll never see. And people think, oh, it's just reality TV, the camera's on. Bullshit. That's all orchestrated. There's so much time being on and so much prep. And there's so, like you said, there's so many things going behind.
It's work.
Yeah, it's all work. It's all work. And no one sees the work behind any of this stuff. It's the assumption that like people had it easy is bullshit. There's a lot of hustle going on for sure. And it's not fun. It's not fun hustle. It's dark. And you go through highs and lows, and it's like that's reality. That's real life. And we all have those, we all can relate to that.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, you said your brother and your father do a podcast together. That sounds wonderful, actually. My father is no more, but me, my brother, and my father were close too. Very, very close. We've been very close as a family unit. And you also told me that your father has been a great influence in your life. And why don't you tell me a little bit about that? Like, how did your father affect you so positively, and what did you get from him, and how the hell did you manage being business partners with him? I mean, that can be a tricky one, right? Being business partners with family, and because in business there's accountability, there's conflicts, there's all sorts of stuff. And how do you do like, if I were you, I would actually find that to be scary. I'd rather like just keep it separate, to be honest with you. But how do you manage that, and how do you still manage to keep that love, friendship, integrity, all of those emotions, conflict, all of those emotions, together, and manage all that?
Yeah, no, that's a heavy question. I think it's a unique situation because it's not like we started the business together. And I have a weird relationship with my father, where he is my father. We're also very close friends, which I call my dad Bob by his first name, which people always find that like really strange. So I think, there's a dynamic there of, number one, when you built something together, all the decisions invariably over the years have been made together. So
what was your father's background, by the way?
He was actually in wealth management for a big firm, Merrill Lynch, which I actually ended up working at as well later on. And then he went out and he started his own consulting business. And he started training people in the wealth management business on his practices, because he had like really good practices back in the day. But he wanted to get off the road at some point. He just like got tired of being on the road. I was working as a financial advisor for one of the bigger institutions at the time, Merrill Lynch, which is owned by Bank of America now. So the decision was made, well, like, hey, you could come back and work with me here, or we could start our own business. So we decided that, having our own shop was kind of like what we wanted to do. So I brought my client base out of Merrill Lynch, 98%, but who's counting? All my clients basically came because of the amazing service, the foresight, brilliance. I'll keep going. So basically, I brought whatever clients I had at the time. We started the business like really from the ground up. And here we are 13 years later, we've just about hit $1 billion, which is kind of cool. But it's an easier thing where, it started together. All the decisions were made together. So we're very entrepreneurial. So it's like, hey, I want to spend an insane amount of money on doing this. Okay, let's try it. There's never like, no. I think we both like, we're cool with risk. We're cool with trying new things. We enjoy the process of building the business. We're open-minded that way. So, I always say knock on wood, because there really hasn't been many arguments, or if any, over the years. We do see eye to eye, and I think it's a very rare relationship. And I think because it was started together, a lot of the framework that it was built on, was good framework. And we just haven't really diverted from that in all these years.
Well, I see that it's your father here has, from what I can gauge, from what you're telling me, has not been very authoritarian. And that's the reason why you can probably function in a very fluid manner, because he's more like a friend to you than a father telling you what to do.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's always a father figure when he needs to be my father, 100%. And he is my father. But in business, he's not my father. In business, he's my partner. And, I don't think we're just not, it's like both personalities aren't that way. Dad's not a very authoritative person. I'm not someone who's going to actually listen to anyone. So, it wouldn't work in those. I think it just has to do with two personalities that jive very well from that perspective. But like, hey, when my dad needs to put the dad hat on in my personal life, he's there for that 100%. It's just in the business realm, it's not that dynamic. You know, just the fact that you're calling your dad Bob, you know, like kind of just speaks to the more collegiate, I guess, type of partnership it is. And I think that's like, they're just distinctive, those roles, and they don't mix. You know what I mean?
Also, you probably don't live with your dad, right? So this
No, in America, we leave home.
exactly.
Like, yeah,
Exactly. So
yeah.
that's another difference, because in where I come from, we just live with our families all throughout, and that's why also it can become very like there's so many dynamics going on that adding like a business dynamic to that, like
Yeah.
to me seems like chaotic, but to you, like everything is separate and nuclear, and it's more manageable that way, I guess.
Yeah. And it's been so successful. So it's like, I mean, to be able to like, hey, look what we built together. You know what I mean? Like we built this from the ground up together. That's a cool thing. I think that's a really unique situation. I mean, I think we have maybe a more loose American relationship in general, but I think I think a lot of people don't have a relationship like that. I think it's a very weird, I don't say weird, unconventional relationship I have with my dad. I think that, and to be able to sit here together and be like, look, we literally built this from scratch. It's pretty fucking cool. I mean, I don't know, you know,
Yeah.
however you want to slice and dice it. It's a cool thing. And it's a special thing we have together as father and son, or, you know, however we want to look at that relationship. So yeah.
Well, that's wonderful, actually, what you're telling me. And well, there is a business relationship what you're describing to me, but what about him influencing you as an individual? Because you told me that you credit him for a lot of the things like that have shaped you as a person. He influenced you in very strong ways. Like what are some things that you either that he taught you, or some things that you just saw in him and you admired and you model yourself after that, or anything like that? Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. No, I think it just, you know, when we were growing up, you know, he was always like a truth seeker, you know, like you and I are talking about different books we read.
Right.
You know, I remember invariably when we were kids, you know, every week there'd be a stack of books back in the day from Barnes and Noble or Amazon that come to the house. And my dad would just have like tons of different books he was reading on everything from, you know, history to self-help books. I'm like, my dad was growing up, he was reading self-help books. I'm like, why are you reading self-help books? He's like, you can always learn something. So he was always very entrepreneurial, very open-minded, still is. Like, he's still like, you know, the cool thing too is like, we're still thinking about the future, and we talk about Bitcoin. We talk about different strategies and what's going to transpire. You know, we do a lot of our conversations are just thinking about like, what's human nature going to do? And actually we've been dead right, which is kind of crazy. I mean, we've been so accurate in things that we thought were going to happen. So my dad, I think, just being a free thinker my whole life, you know, he always said, don't work for anyone else. He says that's more risk, because then you're, you know, basically at the helm of someone else's decision. You're always a decision away from being fired. He says it's less risk to work for yourself because you depend on yourself. So you know, he told us, you know, I always had that from a young age. It was like, you know, you got to think for yourself. Don't listen to the man, you know, like don't trust the government. So my dad was always very, very like autonomous, you know, like think for yourself, do for yourself, be a free thinker. And I think that still carries through today. And I think it's actually really manifests itself in our business, in the way that we've been able to really think about what's going to happen next, with regards to the economy, what's going to happen with where you should have your money. Like, it's kind of crazy. It's almost uncanny how right we've been over the last decade. And I think it is because we think about this stuff pretty heavily. You know, I read a lot, and I got that from him. He read, you know, he always reads everything. And I think because we read so much and we think about things so much, you know, we've been able to really, you know, an influence on me is like, we've been able to think about things in a way that I think most people in Wall Street don't, and don't talk about. And it's served us well. And I think it's going to continue to serve us well. So I think that's really cool.
That is cool. That is cool.
Yeah.
Ryan, you told me that you make music. You're into music.
Yes, I haven't, not as much anymore, but my one claim to fame is, I played in a lot of terrible rock bands, but I did tour all of Ukraine one year. I literally played every city in Ukraine in a Georgian rock band, as in the country Georgia.
Nice.
So I used to play in a lot of rock bands.
I've been to Georgia.
Nice. Food's great. Tbilisi. Yeah. No, actually, the food is some of the best food in the world, I think. Not health food.
I
For
didn't
sure.
like it actually.
Really?
Yeah, I
Oh my
didn't like
God.
Georgian food at all.
You're too healthy now, man. It's like cheeses, meats. Like, I mean, I think the average Georgian limb stage is like 60.
Well, also because I don't eat meat, so maybe that's not a fair thing to
Oh,
say
yeah.
because
You're
I
missing the
don't eat
boat.
meat. Yeah,
You're missing the
yeah,
boat, bro. You're missing the boat. You should just like turn. Yeah. The meat and stuff there is just like insane. And like, I mean, yeah, it's a different culture, Georgia, for sure. But
right.
yeah. So I got some really cool experiences playing some bands. I played like I used to play in a lot of bands around the city. Some horrible bands where you were sometimes embarrassed to be on stage because like the singer was too high or too drunk. So I do have some great stories just playing clubs at night and traveling and stuff like that, which were really cool.
I used to sing when I was young in school, and I was a pretty good singer.
Shakti,
Yeah,
man. Okay.
yeah, and
Impressive.
then I had a period of basically a lot of gambling, irresponsible gambling. And then I had a period of
I want to hear
alcohol.
that story.
Yeah, man, I just gambled. I would be sitting every other day with 100% of my net worth on the table, basically. And many times I lost it all.
Jesus
So
Christ. Yeah.
yeah, so that was my early 20s. And then by 25, I found myself like broke, and then at one point in a debt of $1 million. So at that point, like it really hit me, like I need to change my ways and I need to start, doing things differently. And that's when I changed my life, turned my life around. But all throughout my 20s, one of my biggest regrets is I lost my touch with music. And I really stopped listening to music at all. Like I wouldn't listen to even songs. Even when I had time, I would just listen to audiobooks because I was very curious. And I just completely lost touch with music. And I thought like, I literally, there was a point when I thought that, just like who needs music? Like, but in my 30s, now getting into my 30s, I realized like music is so powerful. It is so soothing. It is so relaxing. It's like missing out on one of the elements of life, not being in touch with music. And now I'm actually consciously getting back into it. I want to start singing songs again. I'm going to do it on my YouTube channel. One of my YouTube channel. I'm starting 7 YouTube channels. So on one of my YouTube, yeah. So I'm on one of my YouTube channels, I'm going to do cover songs, things like that. And I'm listening to music actively now. And I'm really, I think people who don't listen to music are really missing out on something in life. So what is music to you? Like what do you like so much about music to the point that you were willing to stay on stage with drunk people and embarrass yourself?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, well, first off, my ego for being in front of crowds is huge. Like my lust, I don't care how bad the band is. If I'm on stage, sign me up. That's one of the reasons I probably do a lot of TV shows and stuff. It's like, yeah, talking about finance is boring, but okay, 80, 100,000 people are watching. Yes, I want to do that interview. So
good.
I do love.
That's good.
I do love.
And it is powerful to get yourself out there and get your message out, because once you get attention, then you can talk about the things that you believe in, right? So that's
a good
very
point.
powerful.
That's invariably, like, I actually, talking about like instead of wealth, like actually one of the reasons, like, you and I both have started YouTube channels is just to get my thoughts out there is a big part of that. Just like the artistic side of that. And I think, same thing, like music is self-expression. I'm a music freak. I love music. I always have music playing in the background. Like I was cranking it before this podcast. Like, oh, I got to turn the music off. But yeah, I just think like, yeah. And I do think that like that, the artistic side is a huge part of things. In fact, like what we should do in a year from now, when I'm right about Bitcoin, is we'll do a duet, man. You'll sing, I'll play some guitar.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You'll be in a sad state though. You'll be really sad. So
let's put money on it, man. Seriously, let's put money on
it. We'll do the blues, and I'll be there to comfort you with the sounds of my guitar. But I think that's definitely in the making. But yeah, man, no, I'm cool. I think that I'm stoked. That's really cool. You're into music too, because and actually I'll probably bust out a couple. I'll hit some guitar on my YouTube channel too. You've inspired me, or I'll do the same thing. I'll play
absolutely do it, Ryan. Absolutely do it.
We'll call it Shakti's Blues.
Right. Who is Miles Davis, Ryan?
Okay, this is probably.
I don't know who is Miles. Okay, so I'm not into American. I mean, I am into American music, kind of, but I mean, I don't know anything about the person that you mentioned to me in my brief, the Miles Davis, and you said a lot of great things about him. And one of the big things that I want to talk about, which I'm really like fucking waiting throughout this podcast to talk about, is the PC culture, because I think it's a topic that needs to be discussed more. And I would like to hear your thoughts about it. But who is Miles Davis?
Okay, so this is definitely a very American reference then. I guess like you grew up in India. I'm correct about
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. You guys weren't rocking out to Miles Davis. He's a jazz musician. He became popular in the 20s, or I think maybe like 20s, 30s. But what's crazy about him, and people really aren't into jazz much anymore. I still like jazz. The old joke is jazz, can 300 people be wrong? Because like nobody likes jazz. But was it really into jazz now? But I mean, what's remarkable about him is like he was one of the biggest of his time, but he kept reinventing with the time. So, he had hits in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and even the 80s up until his death, which I think was maybe like 90 or late 80s. He was still relevant. And, like, come on, like anything music, as you know, taste change so quickly. And whatever's in style, like you think about what was in your 20s versus your 30s, like, you become irrelevant very quickly. Think about bands or musicians that are like even able to get a decade or two, like never mind just like getting popular once.
Right.
Here's somebody who was able to like readjust like 7 times over his career. That's, to me, is pretty crazy. And
how different was the music though? And every time he reinvented himself, how different was the music?
it's different. I mean, if you listen to it, I mean, he definitely, because jazz changed a lot if you're a jazz fan. But I mean, like, if you heard like what he was doing in like the late 20s, like that bebop era, which was big in Harlem here, and you had people like Dizzy Gillespie, that was way different than what was going on in the 70s when he had like guitars in there and it was like psychedelic rock and stuff like that. And he was actually doing that kind of stuff with his trumpet.
Oh, so he changed instruments and he changed the styles and the tempo and everything.
No, not instrument. He was still playing the trumpet, but he adjusted his trumpet playing with the style. And he would use young musicians. Like he would like switch it up. He'd be in his 40s. His bandmates would be in their 20s because they knew what the new style was. He didn't. He would start learning it, playing it, and then he would get in the groove. He'd figure it out, and then he'd become relevant again.
My only experience with jazz is the movie Whiplash. I love that movie. That's probably going to be in my top 3, top 5 films of all time. I don't know if you've seen it.
I'll have to watch it.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my God. You're a jazz fan too. You love it. It's the movie is called Whiplash. The main guy won an Oscar for that film. One of the best performances ever. The movie is just great, amazing. And it's actually based on a true story. There's a director, like a 30-year-old guy, not even a 30-year, like at the time he was like 28, I think. A 28-year-old guy made this film, and it was based on his drumming teacher back in school.
Really?
Just literally after this podcast, watch the trailer of the film and you'd be so intrigued. It's
okay.
An amazing
I'll watch
film.
it. No, I have heard of it. I just never actually sat down. Maybe I'll watch that this weekend on your recommendation.
So, yeah. What do you think of you said you admire Miles Davis for his unabashed ability to just say what he felt like and say what he thought and not care about what people think. And I think that is a superpower, to be able to say that, because it really is not easy to do that. It really is not. And I admired the biggest reason why I'm Owen's fan is because for years and years and years, he just said so many things that were just not, like, that was so far away from the spectrum of what was acceptable and what was, just in the normal box that we live in. And he just had that ability to just unapologetically get on camera and get in front of hundreds of people and just talk his mind like that. And you said you admire the same thing about Miles Davis. That's what I admire about Howard Stern too. And I think being unfiltered in a way is a superpower, and it's extremely hard to do. I find it hard. It's hard to do. I find it extremely hard to be unfiltered on camera or in front of large groups of people, and I would like to work on that. But how do you think Miles Davis did that, and how do you think that fits in the climate and the environment today in the world?
Oh yeah, he would not. I mean, he'd be canceled in a heartbeat today. But I mean, first off, he's an African American. He was black. His autobiography is amazing, by the way. It's one of the best biographies I've ever read. His life was so crazy. But he was really in an era of like, you had, you know, huge racism. And he was very, very ardent speaking out against the white man. In fact, like he hated the white man. Like, you know, and first off, it was not common at all
And
for
you,
anyone.
the white man, is a fan.
Yeah, me. Yeah. But, you know, in context, this is a time when, you know, Black people did not speak out against white people. Even today, so like they do to some extent, but back then, like forget it. And here he was like just talking about how the white man was just like, you know, the worst thing ever. You know, which takes a lot of balls. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, he definitely said what he thought. And he didn't mince words. You know, he would be like, you know, white people, he'd be like, you know, they're saying Columbus found America, but he's like, Black people are already here. He's like, you know what that is? That's white people shit. You know, like he just like, he got into it in a time when you couldn't be that provocative. And, you know, he was just like, I mean, he was ruthless. He was absolutely ruthless. I mean, I don't know if he was the most likable guy. He probably wasn't. You know, he would just basically get out there, you know, basically take what he wanted in life. I think it was a big thing you take away from it. And he wasn't going to let the fact that he was African-American, that there was segregation, stop him from getting what he wanted. And he was very outspoken about it in a time, you know, we could be, it's not like now where everyone's quote unquote woke and you have Black Lives Matter. Like that wasn't happening in the 50s and the 40s and 30s. You know, it was a time of like extreme racism. And here's somebody not only speaking out, but speaking bad, you know, about his oppressors. So I think that you gotta have to admire that spirit. And again, to be able to just keep reinventing yourself the way he did, it was pretty badass, pretty badass. And I always like definitely admire Miles Davis for all those things. Like he's my like American hero if I had to pick one.
Well, I can't say that I'm going to check him out because I'm not into jazz music, but
Yeah.
but I will check out a few songs if you send me some of his favorite pieces that you have, or some interviews that you like, some piece that you like when he said something. Send me, because I'm intrigued. I'd just like to you know, experience the guy that you feel so strongly
I definitely
about.
will. Yeah, I think you'll dig his vibe.
Absolutely. And what do you think of the PC culture today, Ryan? Like, what do you think of you know, like this world that we live in, where it has kindly now become widely acceptable that, you know, we don't actually have free speech anymore. Like, yeah, we say we have free speech, but really you can't say whatever you want. And obviously we understand where that's coming from, because what you say can affect people and hurt people. And obviously we've seen that with guys like Trump, you know, saying stuff, and then real life events happen based on what he said. So, you know, what you say has consequences. We understand that. But what do you think of that? Like, how much, where are you on the spectrum of like, is it okay to say whatever you want, or like, is it really necessary to censor what you say? And is it okay to, like, with what Jack Dorsey is doing on Twitter, you know, just ejecting people, you know, whenever he feels like? Like, what do you think of all this?
Yeah, I'm not a fan for sure. I mean, I think cancel culture has gone too far. I think big tech is able to make too many decisions with regards to what can be censored, not be censored. You know, that shouldn't be, you know, private citizens making those decisions by, you know, 100%. I think that, you know, even Trump, I know he's unpopular and, you know, he did say some things that were very offensive, but do I think he should have been canceled from places like Twitter and other platforms? I don't know. I think that's a bad precedent to set. And I do think that filtering, and I also don't like the fact that, you know, when you're shamed because you say something that's out of turn or is regarded as offensive, that there's no redemption, right? You just get vilified and that's it. You're done. You're toast. Without any sort of redemption. And I think that's a big problem in today's society, that there isn't redemption, that anything you say that's off color per se, or gets misinterpreted, you know, we feel we have this right to essentially shame these people or, you know, cancel their opinion. And, you know, I'm an optimist. So I think it's just a sign of the times. And I think the pendulum does swing. Like if you go back to the 70s, in the US, this is very germane to the US. I don't know what it's like in India. And not that I was live either, but, you know, you just gotten out of the Vietnam War. You got out of a very dark time in American history. You know, the economy wasn't doing really well. You had hyperinflation. It was a darker time. But what came out of that was you had very not PC comedy. You know, it was a darker comedy. It was funny.
I've heard of that. A lot of
Yeah.
people that I know, some of my friends are into hardcore comedy, and they watch comedians from the 50s and 60s and 70s, and they tell me like some of these things like that, some of the places that these comedians used to go to, like they were that was like really could be very offensive sometimes, and they didn't care. And you know, today comedians get so much of shit just for saying some basic stuff, you know.
Oh, it's
Like
crazy.
Bill Burr got so much shit to just make a joke about the military, you know. I mean, he's like, it's just a joke, man. It's just like a joke. Like, take a joke and just move on.
And I think if we can joke about things, that's what actually eases the tension, right? I mean, like, that's the idea of joking. I think when we get uptight about these things, you know, whatever movement it is, you know, by being uptight and being militant about it and like being like, you must act this way, it just gets people's backs up. And actually is a divider. It's not, I think comedy actually brings it together. Like, you know, I think being able to like joke with people, say things that are off color, but not in a hurtful way, but in a funny way that just like kind of expresses like, okay, like these thoughts are out there. You know, we all have these thoughts or these things are going on. We're not talking about them, but getting them in the open. And I think with humor, like humor is like the greatest bridge. I think it, you know, fills in a lot of gaps that we have in society. And I think a lot of that's missing. And I think it's going to come back though. I think like, I'm optimistic. I think with this, I think a lot of people feel the heavy energy of COVID and being inside and feeling that like everything's kind of controlled. And I think there's going to be a looseness. I could be wrong about this, but I am an optimist. I think there's going to be a looseness that comes out of this.
I also think it's going to be it's just a part of how accessible the world has become digitally through social media and things like that. This whole Me Too movement is actually a feature of how accessible and how connected we've become through social media. And I think just the world will evolve through it, and I think we will be in a better place. But you know who is the most PC comedian? Who I think at least is Jerry Seinfeld, the richest comedian of all time. He doesn't curse. He doesn't offend anybody. But you know what, Ryan? He's not funny. I don't find him funny, man. I don't find him funny at all. I like, to me, his entire comedy set looks like a speech or something. He doesn't make me laugh. Bill Burr makes me laugh.
Who does?
Bill Burr. Bill Burr makes me laugh. Do you know who Bill Burr is?
No, I like Bill Burr. Yeah,
he's amazing.
Fan. Yeah. Well, I think Dave Chappelle to me is the for American comedians is the gold standard. I mean, he's not PC. He talks a lot of social issues. Yeah, he's a pretty intellectual dude, and he's funny, and he's not afraid to say what he thinks. And I think he's kind of harkens back to the 70s when like the Richard Pryors of the world, where you had a lot of these more provocative. So I think he's really cool. There's a lot of other like non-mainstream comedians that I like that are completely on PC. So it's out there. You can find it. But I think there'll be a movement, man. I think some of this stuff's going to come back and people are going to get a little less uptight. And I think that like we're going in this big economic boom. People are going to spend some cash. They're going to be like, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. So I think maybe we're going to go to a place. I could be wrong, but I do think we could go to a place where we get to a freer society, where we went all the way over here, where everything is like, you can't say this, to like, okay, let's lighten up a little bit. Let's enjoy now, be here now. So who knows?
It's exactly what you said. The pendulum will swing to the other side, and hopefully it does. I mean, we want to see it. I want to see it. You want to see it. We're
gonna get crazy, bro. We're gonna get crazy. We're just gonna go out. Yeah, we're gonna be like just animals. Like we're gonna be in like literally just running around in Tarzan outfits, like eating meat off the drinking in the streets. Just we're going there. I feel it.
Ryan, you and I have something in common that I want to talk about. It's a long-term relationship that we mentioned earlier in the podcast. I was with a girl that for a long time, and I wouldn't change anything actually, just because I was just so attached to her and just she was like family to me. But I would say that I did kind of waste her time and also my time for too long, just knowing that this is not going where it should, and if it's not, then I should have cut those ties before. And you said something similar to me, that you were in a relationship for a long time, and I'm sure you had a good time there, or I don't know, why don't you tell me about it? But what was that like to have a long-term relationship? And you said you kind of regret not cutting ties, sooner. What do you say about
Yeah.
that? And what do you want to say to people that actually, and I'll give you my 2 cents on it, but what do you want to say to people that actually stay too long, sometimes for a lifetime, into a relationship that they actually don't want to be in?
Okay, this is a hard one because it's a newer development, but I will say this. I think, my relationship, and who knows, we could still get back together. I'll put that caveat out there. But in the situation we were in limbo, where the one person in the relationship wanted to move forward, and the other one, being reluctant, you basically, I was trying to keep someone else happy by staying in the relationship, but not moving forward. I was actually hurting the other person and hurting myself.
That's exactly what was happening with me.
Yeah.
And that is what exactly happens with a lot of people.
Yeah.
That, you stay in it just because you love this person. You've been friends with them, lovers with them for so long, and you don't want to hurt them. And, you just, what happens on the contrary is exactly what you said. You end up hurting them by being in it, longer than you wish to.
Yeah, you think you're right. Instead, you might be winning the battle in that moment, but you're losing the war, I think is a good way to say it, because it's like, okay, maybe you're placating, you're putting the Band-Aid on in that moment to make that person not truly happy. But what you're really doing is, and we know time is very valuable. It's kind of a theme today as we talk about how as we get more successful and more busy, we start to value time more than money, because obviously money is infinite, time is not. Time is finite. So I think it's hard because when things aren't bad, right? It's not like it was a bad relationship. There's no real catalyst. It's not like everything's effed up. You're yelling at each other every day, and that's like maybe an easier place to say, hey, this isn't working. But like when it's that slow grind, going back to inflation, I was talking about the death by 1,000 cuts, where things aren't moving forward, but all these things add up over time. And then, bam, you blink, years have gone by. And nobody's really 100% happy. So I think it's the slow cuts that are more dangerous than the big cuts, because when you have the big cuts or something really fucked up happens, you're forced to change immediately and move on. But when it's something that's slow, it's not necessarily like a fire right on your feet, but a slow burn. I think they're the things invariably in life that get you, because then years go by. And then after lots of tiny burning, or a little slow burn, the burn is just as bad, if not worse, and more time has gone by. So I think like those are things maybe addressed in your life that that are hard to address because there's no real catalyst, but you got to create some sort of urgency for yourself to address them, because if not, things can go on for a very, very long time. And again, time is the most precious thing we have, period.
What do you think, Ryan, about happily ever after? Do you think it exists? Like, do you think it ever happens? Because I'll tell you, I was in a relationship with this girl. I thought I was going to get married to her, have children with her. Like, that was like, if I had to choose one thing that I was absolutely sure about in my life, it was this. And that didn't work out. And now I just have this thing in my mind that no matter who I meet now, I'm always questioning myself, like, okay, I think it's going to be happily ever after, but what if 5 years later I change my mind? And what do you think about that? Do you think it even exists? Because there's definitely people in our world that think that it doesn't exist. You basically stay together as long as it's good, and then the moment you're not happy, then do you just keep ejecting the moment you're not happy? Because Jordan Peterson, a guy like Jordan Peterson, I don't know if you listen to him, but he would say that you have to stick in the relationship no matter what. Like, you have to commit, and then commit fully, even if you are unhappy. That's the other side of the argument. Like, what do you think about that? Or do you think that you will ever find someone that you will just be happily ever after with? Or do you think, like, when you hit those bumps in the road, do you persevere through? Like, how do you know it's a dip or it's a cul-de-sac? Like, how I guess that's what I'm asking.
I think they're two different issues. I think and times get tough and getting through it is different than being in something because of the wrong reasons, right? They're two different issues. Because if you're in for the wrong reasons, you might be able to stomach the ups and downs, but at the end of the day, if you're not on the same page with what you both want, again, if you're in it because you're trying to make that other person happy, that's a different thing than like, you're always, look, any relationship, there's no sugarcoating it, right? I mean, you're going to have your bumps along the way. It's just life. That doesn't exist. And anyone tells me we don't fight, they end up getting divorced or something like that's just not natural, right? So I think that's one issue. And I think having the fortitude to stay in, that's important to make any relationship work, period. You've got to have that component of it. I think it's where the relationship comes from. I think at some point you've got to decide in life, give yourself the permission to have the pursuit of happiness. And I think a lot of us do things out of obligation in life. And it depends how you were raised. A lot of times we're raised, and I think Indian cultures like this, there is a lot of obligation in that culture where you're expected to be a certain way. And I think that's where your father can be a more authoritarian figure, because there's a lot of plans made for you and you're meeting expectations. And I think it's true in all cultures, by the way. And obviously I've dealt with this a lot in my own life. And I think a lot of times I find this in Indian culture specifically, you can relate to this. And I think that we end up with a life of obligation. And this can all come down to who you pick as a partner as well. You feel like maybe it's the right person because it's good on paper, or that it's socially acceptable. Because I can tell you, like, there's so many relationships where it's good on paper, but in practicality, it just sucks. But we do it because of that superficial obligation that we feel that we got to deal with. And that's why ripping the Band-Aid off for things like this is really hard. So I think at some point in life, if you can come to this crosswords that you deserve the pursuit of happiness, first and foremost, and it's like a selfish thing, but it's not a selfish thing, because I don't think you can truly make someone else happy, like talking about my relationship or maybe talking about your relationship the same way, if you haven't made yourself happy first. And this isn't like in a selfish, like I'm going to go out all night and party, I don't care about you type of way, but more like, you've decided that you're going to pursue life on your terms, which is really hard to do in face of all the obligations, which are usually going to be against what you actually want to do. So I think if you can come to that crossroads in your life, I don't care if it's your 20 or 30, 40, the earlier, the better. And just decide that you're going to go for the pursuit of happiness. When you find that person, you're going to be searching for them in the context of what you actually want. So psychologically, when you find that person and they fit the bill of that pursuit that you're on, then it's going to flow with that and it jives with that. So I think you have to make a conscious effort to be happy. But that's also by pursuing things that make you happy. And again, I'm going to be willing to bet for a lot of us, it's going to be in complete juxtaposition to what other people have expectations for you to do, which makes it really hard. But when you do it in that context, which is the harder part, then you should be able to find happiness ever after, which is still a tumultuous ride where you're going to have hard times along the way. But because it comes from a certain place, that's the real key there. And I think a lot of us don't come to that ever. And I feel like by making this harsh decision that I made recently, and however it turns out, I don't know how it's going to turn out yet, part of me just said that I want my pursuit of happiness right now. And I know this isn't making this person happy or me happy. If that makes sense. That was a lot. Sorry.
Right. No. I understand. What you're saying. And it's a tricky one. I guess you have to persevere. But at some point, if you have persevered and you still are not, aligned with your goals, your vision for life, then you have to be strong enough to let it go. And I also think there's a huge part here to not just, I think a lot of the guys just settle for whatever they have. A lot of the women settle for whatever they have in the moment. And a big part of this is what Owen teaches, right? Become a high value guy so that you have the options to then choose from. A lot of the guys don't have options. So whatever they have, they're like, okay, this is what I have, so this is what I got to live with. That's not how it works. That's why you have to get good socially. You have to meet a lot of people. You have to become successful in life so that a lot of people, you become desirable in the marketplace. And then from that place of abundance, then you make the choice of what is right for you. And you have to have extremely high standards for that. Even for a business partner, I've had business partnerships that have fallen out, and I've realized that a lot of the times I was doing a lot of settling there, like, okay, he's got problems here and there, but it's okay. I'm going to put up with this. I'm going to put up with that. And then suddenly, like a snowballing effect, it's not okay. And it suddenly, it's irritating you, bothering you. And then, 2-3 years down the line, then it breaks, and then it breaks really ugly. So
it
yeah. And
compounds.
also drawing boundaries early in the relationship, like, this is what I will do, this is what I won't do, like drawing those boundaries. Because a lot of the times we just adjust, like, okay, I'm going to put up with this, but then suddenly 6 years later you're shouting and screaming about it, that I never wanted to do this, I did this for you, like that sort of thing. And you have to be clear about what you want from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think there's two things actually I'll say on that. The first one is, I heard this, I forget where I read this one time. It's one of the smartest things I've ever heard. It was probably in a self-help book or something like that. Actually, probably like one my dad was reading. I'm going to check it out now too. This guy said, like, okay, he was in this class one time, and in the class they gave him like the option for like 4 markers. You could get a green one, a blue one, a yellow one, or purple one. And basically, the last lady asked him, which marker do you want? He said, whatever one. And the lady said to him, no. No matter what it is, always say the thing that you actually want. And he thought about it. He's like, yeah, I actually want the purple one. It's a small nuance, but I think and it goes to another point. And this actually, I'll give this to my father as well. He always said, say to yourself, why not me? Why not me? Why can't I be the person that does this or does that? Why, why not?
Exactly.
And I think it's a simple thing, but it says a lot. And I always said that, like, the little things are big things. So, like, if you want this or you want that, say you want it, articulate it, and get in a habit of doing it. Because this is just a habit. And then after a while, it becomes the natural way to do things. But like, to your point, at the end of the day, then you manage expectations better. You don't feel like you're being marginalized because you didn't really say what you want, because the other person might not know what you really want because you never said it. They don't know what pisses you off.
Exactly.
But when you start getting the mindset of doing that, it has a profound positive impact on your life, 100%. And you're not coming from that people-pleasing mindset. And they're just little things. But like anything else, little things, like you just said, become big things, whether negative or positive. So if you continue to keep your emotions down, not say what you want, it just compounds. You become even more miserable and pissed off later. Or if you start saying the little things you want in those little situations, like the goddamn marker, exponentially, that builds on itself. And again, it's a positive spiral. So
it becomes a way of life. It becomes a way of life.
Exactly.
It becomes a way of that relationship, so you have to build those friendships, business partnerships, relationships. It goes everywhere, right? The only thing I would say why a romantic relationship is different, because we have our chemicals messing things up. It's like almost like a little corruption, there. Like, once you have attraction, then you start to make all these adjustments, like, okay, I'll put up with this, I'll put up with that. And just because the guy is charming or the girl is, hot, and we make those sacrifices, and
as you get older, you get less tolerant of all that shit. Just trust me.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, everything's like, like some that comes with age too. But I think it's a good framework to start from. And I think it's just like giving yourself the permission to be like, why shouldn't it be me? In any situation, whatever it is, in business, like, that entitlement. I just think like, why not? You know what I mean? We're all here. We're all just like trying to figure it out. No one's got to figure it out. So you know what? Why not you be the one that deserves to get the things that you desire deep down inside? That's the pursuit of happiness, right? And I think it's a lot of times it's going to be against what other people want for you and conflicting things. But once you do it and you rip that Band-Aid off, man, it's a much freer place to come from. And the things that grow from that are just like, unbelievable. So, it's worth pursuing, obviously.
Ryan, I want to finish with a final topic that I want to talk about, and that is retirement. My goal is to make $10 billion. I made a Instagram post recently. Okay, this was the post.
Yeah.
My goal is to make $10 billion, then go buy a castle in Switzerland, make talk shows, and read. That's all that I want to do. I want to read, make talk shows, and like, hopefully do other meaningful things with my money. But I don't know yet what else I want to do with my money. But that's my dream. What is your dream? You wrote like, well, you have $1 billion fund. You're obviously moving. You have positive momentum. You know, how old are you, by the way?
43.
Oh my God, Ryan, I would have guessed like you would be in your early 30s or something. Oh wow, it's amazing.
It's all the drinking and medication in the morning. No, it's not true. I mean, all healthy.
Really,
all organic,
I'm genuinely surprised. I'm genuinely
I'll take
surprised.
it, man. I'll take it.
Okay, good. So yeah, like I think 10 years down the line, you might be in a position where, you know, you might choose not to work anymore, or not to go as hard at work anymore as possible. And who knows, your system, you go to work on your business, right? So who knows, your system doesn't need you anymore. So what are you going to do then? Like what is your dream? What do you want to do when you retire at some point?
Just to beat you out, I want to get 11 billion then. Forget 10 billion. Just so I can have 1 billion more than you. No, it's not a money pursuit. I mean, it's easy to say that at this stage of my life, but I think
for me it is. I'm fucking unapologetic about it. For me, a big portion of my goals is just money. I just love making money. The putting like quantifying it like in terms of net worth. I just love that. I keep track of it. I make goals for it like regularly, and I go after it. For you, maybe it's not all monetary, but what is it about for you? And then once you get to that point, what is the dream? What do you want to do in the last phase of your life?
No. I think that's a fair question. I mean, I think, you know, money, again, I use money to me as a vehicle. It gives me, you know, give me the independence that I need. So, you know, obviously the cash flow at this point is at a place where I can pretty much do the things I want to do for sure. But I learned this like from my clients actually, because, you know, I have clients that retire, clients that don't retire. We have a lot of clients that are in their 80s, 90s. And it's amazing. The clients that retire, you know, a lot of times they go downhill very quickly because they don't have that evolutionary pressure on them anymore. And they get old quick. Whereas I notice the clients that stay active in their 80s, maybe even keep working, but they just like, they have really active lifestyles and they're pursuing things. You know, you have a lot more longevity and quality of life is a lot higher. You know, people, they look younger, more youthful. So I don't think I'll ever stop working per se. You know, I guess, you know, like you, I've got a lot of passion. I got a lot of things I like to do. I like to play music. I like to write. You know, so I have a lot of interests. So, you know, for me, I think it's just spending the time pursuing a lot of those projects. And I'm going to, you know, I'm doing them now. Like I started this YouTube channel like you are. I started a podcast this year, which is really cool. But there's also like other, like I'd like to do some more stuff with playing music maybe, and doing some more writing, more prolific stuff that's outside the realm of finance. So I think, you know, I'm going to be doing all those things and starting to do a lot of those things as I've started to do over the next couple of years anyway. So I think all those things I'm probably going to just continue to pursue. And then, you know, from the financial piece, like whatever, I don't really have a scorecard. I mean, I kind of know the numbers I need to do everything I want to do. And it's not like, you know, given what my business is worth and things like that, it's not that far off in the scheme of things. So like, I don't really think about the money aspect much at all. It's a byproduct at this point. You know, it's like, if I keep doing the things I'm doing, we're going to bring more clients in. The business is going to grow exponentially. You know, far exceeds any financial goals I ever had. I never had big financial goals, ironically, and a financial advisor, which is funny. So, you know, I've already exceeded all those goals years ago. I just never, but I think because it is a byproduct of like really working on the business, like we talked about, making those changes, and doing a lot of cool things. I was a freaking financial advisor for many years, which, you know, that's all I did. Now I'm, you know, I'm doing all these media things, and that's like takes up most of my time. So, you know, even being in the same business, my actual job has changed dramatically over the years. So yeah, I think that's pretty much where I see myself, just continually pursuing these other projects, and, you know, doing them. And at the same time, my business ideally keeps growing, and maybe someday we sell, I don't know. We have a really young team, so there's no reason to do that in the short term. But I'm a simple man, bro. I'm a simple man. So it should be, you know, pretty modest stuff. You know, but you're gonna invite. I want to be invited over for dinner, man, at your castle. Swedish, at your castle. After I save you from losing all your money in Bitcoin, I'll be like,
we got to do another podcast on Bitcoin, man.
Oh, I'd love to do
Actually,
it.
that might not
You're
be.
gonna be a
Yeah, that
bastard.
might not be fun. Yeah, that might not be fun.
Painful.
We both are too passionate to, to be civilized on that podcast. So, so yeah, yeah. But it was fun. It was fun talking, man. It was really a good conversation. It's always good to get perspectives, and I think it was fun. We should do it again at some point on another topic, or something like that.
No, let's do it. It's awesome. This is a lot of fun, man. This is a lot of fun. We'll have to hang too, for real. Like, depending on where you're going to be or I'm going to be, we'll definitely have to get together. This has been really cool. I'm glad I got the connection with you and your brother. It's awesome.
Well, absolutely. I'm going to come to New York for sure because I just love it. So whenever I come to New York, I'll hit you up.
Mikasa Sukasa, brother. So yeah, definitely. If you come here, absolutely. Yeah, that'd be great. So we'll have to hang and we'll have to pillage the city, most importantly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.